So the first step in placing a grommet or a buttonhole for a drawstring is to cut a square of fusible interfacing, and you're going to apply that on the back of the placement mark for your opening. So I've got a little mark right there, so I'm just going to put it right on the back. Make sure it's centered. Make sure the fusible side is down. I'm going to use a pressing cloth. And that's nice and fused on there. And I'll do the second one. So I'm going to show you how to apply a grommet using a Cam Snaps press. There are many other tools and types of grommets that can be used. Pretty near all of them, I think, are going to require a small hole to begin with. So what I usually do is just fold my fabric at the placement mark, make a tiny snip, like 1/8 of an inch, and then I get my scissors into that little hole and make more tiny snips around it. I'm going to take my grommet and just stretch that hole around it. The grommet back on and press it. There we go. So let me show you how to sew the pockets for the hemlock hoodie. So the first step of sewing the pocket is to sew the pocket band on. Here you're going to need to fold your pocket hole on your front bodice in half and mark the center point with a pin or a clip. Then you're going to fold your pocket band wrong sides together and mark the center of this as well. There we go. Align the raw edges and place the middle point of your pocket band and your pocket hole together. And you've got something that looks like this. So the pocket band will need to be stretched as you sew it around the curves of the pocket. So you're going to stretch it, pin or clip it in place, and do that all the way around it, and then you're going to sew it, stretching as you do. There we go. It's all clipped in place. So now I'm just going to sew it, and I'm going to stretch it out so that pocket band is the same length as the hole as I sew it. Okay, so that's sewn. So what I'm going to do next is press that seam and then top stitch on the main fabric side of the seam, so not along the band but along the body, right next to that seam. I'm going to top stitch all the way around. So here we've got the pockets pressed and top stitched. So the next stage is to place the pocket piece behind. And there were notches on the paper pattern piece to mark. So that's going to mark the top and bottom of your pocket. I'm going to flip this over. And place it like that. Now, to keep it in place while you're sewing, because you're going to sew from the front, feeling for the edges around, and sew around the edge here. The best way to keep it in place is to use either a double-sided tape, or you can use a washable glue stick. Now, if you use a washable glue stick to glue it down, you're going to have to wait for the glue to dry before you can sew. Otherwise, you'll gum up your needle. So I tend to use the tape. And I just cut small pieces of it, stick it under the edge, remove the backing. So here we've got the finished front with the pockets top stitched in place. I used a decorative stitch, but even just a regular straight stitch with a long stitch length works just fine for the pockets. It's got a little bit of bubbling, but I haven't pressed it yet. That will come out, no problem. So the next step is the raglan seams at the sleeves and the back. So here's the back piece in one of the sleeves. It'll have notches on it showing the back and the front. I haven't actually transferred my notches, but it's very easy to tell which is the front and the back because the back is a little bit taller. So I'm going to match this up with the back here. There we go. And then the other sleeve seam goes with the front. And then you just sew. You would normally sew these one at a time, but I'm just going to show you the progression. So it doesn't really matter which one you start with, but you're going to sew one of the seams, and then the next one, and then the same with the other sleeve. It's going to be sewn to the back and to the front. Alright, so here we've got all 4 of the raglan seams sewn. And the next step is going to be to put your side seams together and the bottom of your sleeves. Now I'm doing short sleeves, but if you have long sleeves, they'll be obviously longer. You're going to start at the bottom of the sleeve and sew all the way down the side seam to the hem. And there we go, we've got both side seams sewn. So all this one needs now is the hood, which we'll work on next, and the hem. So for your ears, for the accessory hood, for the inner accent piece, what I've done here is I've used double-sided tape just to stick it on. And now I'm going to sew a zigzag stitch along the edges to attach it and finish the edge there. Okay, now that that's done, the next step is to place the ear lining and the ear front right sides together and sew along the top edges. Okay, when you get to the top corner, you want to be 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter away from the opposite edge. You're going to lift your press foot, pivot, and put it down and sew back down the other way. Okay, so after you've sewn, the next step is to trim your seam allowance. Snip straight across at the top and on the other side. And then you're going to flip it right side out. Here's one I've already flipped right side out. To get the corner up, you need a thin object, but that's not going to pierce your fabric. So something like a chopstick, the end of a paintbrush to push that point out. There we go. The first step of any hood is to place the sides right sides together and sew along the outside curve. This is an accessory hood, so the front edges will be constructed a little bit differently from a standard hood. So to put the ears in, to put any of the accessories in, you're going to put them in the marked locations and sandwich them into the seams. So if you were doing the dinosaur spikes or anything that it goes along the back, you would place them at the marked locations along the back edge. I think the dino spikes just go along the full edge, and there's no marked location, but I believe there's a marked location for some of the other ear types. But the ear types that go along the front, the cat and the bear ears for sure, I'm not sure about the others, go at this notch right here. So you're going to flip it right side out and place the outer edge at the notch. And you want to make sure that the front of the ear is face up. And then you're just going to baste it to the hood and do the same with the other ear over here. Here's my band for the accessory hood. So I've got the lining and the main side of the band right sides together. I'm going to sew along the front edge, which the front is this section here. And you can tell because if you lift it up like this, the front edges of the hood are going to go like that. Whereas if you had it flipped over, that this edge obviously isn't the front of the hood. So we're going to sew along the front edge of the hood right down to the corner. Here's the hood band sewn together. So we're just going to flip this around and give it a good press. So here the hood band is pressed, and I've also folded it in half to find the center and added some clips to prepare it for clipping it to the sides of the hood. So you take the center, match it right sides together with the top seam. Then you're going to go down to the corner and match this corner here of the hood band with the bottom corner. And then just ease the rest of these curves together. Okay, do that the rest of the way around. Starting at this corner. And there we go, ready to sew. So after you've got the band sewn on, you flip your hood right side out. And you're going to cross it over, whichever way you prefer. I prefer this way. And match it up at the front notch. Inner clip it. So I've placed clips at all of the notches. The front notch is overlapped, and then the other notches are marked. So we're going to take the bodice inside out. Stick the hood down in it. Match up the front with the front of the bodice. You can match up the seams and fold it to find it, the center front, and then match that up with the center front of the hood. And then the remaining notches should all line up perfectly with your sleeve seams. There we go, ready to sew the hood on. So to sew the lined cowl, or the unlined, the first step is to put the back seam together and sew that. With the lined one, you want to make sure that your lining pieces are together and your main pieces are together. I've used the same fabric, but I've put the grommets on one layer, so I need to make sure that the grommets are all together on the same one. For the unlined cowl, you're just going to fold over the edge and hem it. This would be the edge with more curve to it, the unnotched edge. You can see I've got notches along this edge to mark up with the neck hole. So you want the edge without the notches. Okay, so for the lined cowl, you place them right sides together and then sew with the regular seam allowance along the unnotched edge. Okay, so that's sewn, and you can see that even though I have a serger, I've used my sewing machine for this. I tend to use my sewing machine for any seams that are going to be fully enclosed, just because they tend to be less bulky that way. But you can use your serger on these seams as well. And if you're doing an unlined cowl, I would definitely use a serger or use a sewing machine with a zigzag stitch to finish the edges. Okay, so let's flip this right side out. But you want to give it a good press. For sweater knit like this, I would definitely use a pressing cloth in between the iron and the fabric. And then you're going to top stitch it an inch away from the edge to create a casing for your drawstring. If you're not using a drawstring, then you could top stitch right close to the edge if you wanted to. After top stitching the channel for the drawstring, you can overlap the front of the cowl at the notch. The notch is right there. And then turn your dress or top inside out. And you're going to put the cowl inside the neck hole. Fold and mark the front, center front. And match that up with that center notch, front notch on the cowl. And then the remaining notches should line up with your sleeve seams. Right there. And then sew all the way around. And here's the cowl attached. So all we have to do is thread the drawstring through hem the sleeves and the bottom, and it's done.